Good evening, dear listeners. Today we have another interesting guest in our studio, and this is Olena Kolesnyk, and she's going to share her story of learning English and teaching English. She has a wide experience of teaching English abroad in Asian countries in particular. So, Olena, the floor is yours. Would you please tell who are you, what is your current job, and where are you based right now?
First of all, I'd love to say thank you for having me here and thank you for such a lovely introduction. It's nice to meet you all, whoever is listening to this. The question was,
where are you based right now and what is your current occupation?
So I've been living in Istanbul, Turkey for 3 years now, working online, teaching English and helping English teachers, to make their work a little easier, more creative, and more fun.
Mm-hmm. Who is your student? Like, what kind of audience do you teach? What is the age? What are the levels?
So I used to teach kids and even babies a lot back in Asia, which I think we're going to talk a little more about today, but now it's adults. Teenagers. I have a few kids. It's individual lessons, group lessons, and speaking clubs.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. Then could you please dwell a little bit on your own experience of learning the language? What inspired you to start learning and teaching English?
Mm-hmm. That's, I think, is a very interesting question. It started back when I was like 6 years old. I just had this huge passion for the English language. I couldn't really tell where it came from or why exactly I wanted to learn it. I also had a passion for traveling. I knew one day I would want to travel a lot, so I probably wanted it, to help me travel. I knew I would need it to be able to travel around the world. That's how it started. I started learning by myself, and then I took a bunch of different courses, school, university, mentors, learning from native speakers a lot, different books, and so on.
And how did you get into teaching? What was the point that you understood you wanted to teach other people?
Mm-hmm. So my first job was in IT. I used to work in IT as a sales coach. So I would teach people to sell more and also, help them a little to improve their English, help them with certain phrases. They would help them sell more. And I think back then I realized I was more interested in learning and discovering how the English language works and explaining it to other people, like sharing this love and passion with others. So then I learned about these opportunities in China. And in China, I got my first job. I found a job in a kindergarten. That's how I started basically teaching.
And what motivated you to move abroad, especially to China, and to start working for a kindergarten? What was the driving force here?
I think it was a big, bold move for me back then. But first of all, opening new horizons. I knew there was going to be a lot of new stuff to learn for me, a lot of new experiences, a lot of new great people to meet. And yeah, it's relatively, especially back then, it was relatively easy to get a job as an English teacher in China, way easier than, again, back then it was to find a job in Ukraine. I'm not sure about now because, well, it's becoming more and more popular among native speakers. But back then it was super easy.
By back then, which years do you mean? When was it?
So it was 8 years ago now.
Okay. Yeah. So now the situation has changed a lot. Could you please describe your typical working day in a kindergarten? How did it look? What were your duties? How many hours did you teach? And what was the age of your pupils?
That's a great question. They were 2, 3 year old babies. I just remember they would cry a lot. I would talk to them, they would just cry back. But they were super cute. I love them as my own kids. I still love them and miss them a lot, even after all these years. As for my typical working day, it would start at 8 a.m., I think, and finish at 5. And they weren't super demanding. I didn't have to teach I wouldn't give traditional lessons. I would just talk a lot. We would play, we would go out, do lots of activities. And well, I would speak English to them a lot, of course. And that's how they would pick up the language. So I have to say it was super chill. It wasn't very hard. The only thing that was a bit stressful for me was that I would take a lot of part-time classes, like extra classes after my full-time job. I would do this group lessons because they pay so much. And I was like, okay, I can skip dinner just to make more money and to, gain experience and stuff. Uh, but yeah, for the full-time job, it was really chill and fun to spend so much time with kids.
By talking about when you talk about the payment rate, do you mean the payments that you got at kindergarten or the extra ones that you did after your kindergarten job?
The extra classes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And about then kindergarten, can you share how much or did you get just for people to know? Because nowadays lots of teachers are interested in that, and it's good to compare and to see whether it is beneficial.
Mhm. So from what I heard, now the market is not that good for us non-native speakers, so it's less, I think. But back then, again, it depends. If you find a good agent, you would usually do it through a middleman. If you find a decent and honest middleman, you would make more. But like my first job and my first school paid around $2,000, 2.5, something like that.
So you didn't have like hour payment. You had as a stable salary every it was fixed.
Yeah, because it was a full-time job, 9 to 6.
And how was your position called? Were you an English teacher?
Yeah, an English teacher, but we had I had my own class of students, of babies, and I also had 3 Chinese assistants who, took care of the kids, changing clothes, putting them to bed, and all.
So your duties were mainly connected with teaching them. It was not about looking after
Absolutely.
them.
No, yeah.
For baby care.
Yeah, no.
And how did you manage to find approach to those small babies? Like if I have one at home and it's too hard, but when you have a group of how many students did you have in that group?
Around 20,
Yeah.
a bit more than 20 kids, yeah, in one class.
How did you deal with and how did you manage to catch their attention and to keep it for some time just to do the activities?
Well, first of all, I think I have to mention that when I was moving to China, I told my parents, hey, I'm gonna be back in a few months. I hate kids. From what I know, I hate China as well. I'm not gonna love it. I'm so sure of that. I wasn't good with kids back then, frankly speaking, but I love them. They are like the cutest creatures ever. As for finding the approach, I just tried to be a friend and to, change activities frequently. You can't sit in front of them and give a lecture. That doesn't work, but a lot of physical activities that like involves, jumping, walking, running, even screaming. That is something that helped me a lot to keep them involved and keep their attention.
Did you have anybody at that kindergarten to help you with teaching methods, just to have to give you some training or some preparation courses, yeah, for working there? Did you have anything?
Yeah, there were people responsible for onboarding of like newcomers, new teachers. And also I was able to visit other teachers' classes and see how they do it and learn from them.
Mm. What about any cultural differences when working with Chinese kids? Are they very different from Ukrainian kids?
The cultural differences, mm, I wouldn't say so. They were babies, so not in the kindergarten. I didn't have any big cultural shock in terms of, working with kids there versus working with kids in Ukraine. Um, but then the teenagers that I taught later on, like in public schools, um, one thing that shocked me a lot was that my Chinese assistants were able to take a ruler and, hit the student if they don't behave. I was pretty shocked. I was hurt myself, but I was in no power to stop her because, she's in charge of the discipline and all. I hope it's not a thing in Ukraine, and from what I know, it's not.
Yeah, it's something old-fashioned, really,
Absolutely.
long time
Yeah.
ago. Fortunately,
Yeah,
not.
they sorry. I was going to say they do have this communist approach, but one thing that was truly beautiful, I found it amazing that they listened to the national what do you call it, anthem, yeah, every morning. Like even me myself, I had goosebumps, and I was like, why don't we do it in Ukraine? At least back when I was a schoolgirl, we didn't have that.
Mhm. This is the way they raise their young generation, yeah, to
Yeah,
mm,
yeah.
yeah, like to develop this feeling of patriotism by different things. All
Mhm.
right, then how long did you spend in China, like teaching these kids, and then you mentioned teenagers. All in all, how long was it?
It lasted 2.5 years.
Okay,
Yeah,
and
yeah, and then I left.
mhm. Yeah, go
I think the main reason for me to leave was I was sick all throughout the winter, all throughout the year, even because it was very hot in summer. I lived in the south of China, and they have no heating system in winter. You're like literally freezing. I would wear a scarf to sleep, and in summer it's so hot and humid that it's unbearable as well. I got tired of being sick, and I was like, okay, I'm selling my health and youth for money. So my advice for somebody who's looking into, finding a job in Asian countries would be to pick your destination carefully and wisely. Don't go for the first thing that pops up. It would be nice to work in a bigger city, I think, because the city I worked in was more of a village. Well, it's a huge town, but still more of a village, not much to do. It wasn't super developed. So yeah, be more careful when choosing your destination. Um,
And yeah,
yeah.
regarding this adaptation process, how long did it take you to adapt to new language, to new food, to people around you, to the culture, to their religion? And what about Chinese? Did you pick up any Chinese there?
It took me a while. I have to admit, it did take me a while, especially the food, like um, I, I was feeling as if I was in a dream that I wouldn't wake up from for a long time. Everything is just so different. The food tastes different. The smells are different. I was feeling as if even the air was different. So different. Um, the food was the hardest. I think eating with the chopsticks, again, took me a while to get used to. But once I did, I grew to love it. I now love Chinese food and I go for Chinese food once in a while when I miss China. The people were super friendly. Uh, Even though it was hard for us to communicate because of the language barrier. They don't speak English much, the adults, right? But they were really, really friendly. They would invite me to their places, to dinners. They would want to spend time with me, take selfies, take pictures. Um, yeah, but at the same time, I didn't, manage to build any true real friendships with them because of the different views on life, I think. They are nice, they are friendly, warm, and welcoming, but still, we see life from very different perspectives.
Were you there alone, or did you go to China to teach with a friend or some close people?
Yeah, I had a friend there. I went there with a friend of mine, another Ukrainian girl.
Yeah, that's better together.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't have done it if I hadn't had her
Mhm.
there.
What about the attitude of Chinese people to the job of a teacher? How do they see it in their culture, in terms of their culture, in terms of their religion, and just in a society? Is it a highly respected job?
Uh, they respect teachers, I would say, even way more than we do in Ukraine. I did feel more valued there. They would, pay lots of respect. You could see it in the way they talk to you, in the way they treat you. They would like bring you gifts to show that you're valued, that you're appreciated. I'm not only talking about like expensive gifts, which they did too, but even like small signs of appreciation. There were a lot.
Mhm. And just in general, like reflecting on your experience in China, how did it benefit you professionally and personally?
I learned so much from that experience, and what I do now, the way I teach English now, I think has a lot to do with what I learned back in China. So I know that communicating is the key. Practicing speaking is the key to learning any language. Yes, of course, grammar is so important. Vocabulary is important, but speaking mm, is something that I focus on mostly now with my students.
Did you learn Chinese yourself?
Oh, not really. No, I did pick up a few words, but it's just so hard to learn because of the tones they have for every vowel. They have, I think, 6 tones, and depending on the tone you use or misuse, the changing of the meaning of the word changes. So it's too hard to learn.
Mhm. And which languages do you speak besides
Uh,
English?
Ukrainian and English.
Okay. What about Turkish? Like you're now in Turkey?
Again, same thing. I did pick up some words and phrases. I can understand more than I can say at this point. But the thing is, I'm surrounded by the people who can speak English, so they never, challenge me to learn Turkish.
Mhm. What about people in Istanbul? Do they speak English? Is it easy to communicate?
Um, yeah, the young people they speak English a lot. The older people not so much, but still it's not so difficult. I mean, I know some basic phrases to use with taxi drivers or the cashier at the supermarket. But yeah, it's quite easy to find people and make friends with people who speak English here. Yeah.
Besides teaching in China, which other countries did you go to teach?
Mm, So it was Vietnam then. I took a break after China for a year because I was really, really exhausted working so many hours because of the extra lessons that I mentioned. I would take a lot. I was exhausted and I decided to, spend my savings a little and enjoy my life, travel a little more. And then I found myself in Vietnam where I was like, okay, I want I want my life to have a bigger meaning now, and I want to grow and develop my skills, my teaching skills. And I found a job in Hanoi, in the capital of Vietnam. So I worked in Vietnam then. I would also have like I would take part in speaking clubs in Cambodia and Thailand, but it doesn't really count much, just a few times.
What kind of job did you have in Vietnam? Who did you teach?
Same kids and adults. Yeah, I started teaching adults in Vietnam. So kids, teenagers, adults.
And what,
It's even,
yeah, sorry, what kind of
sorry.
organization was it? Was it a school or private institution? What was it?
Both. So both. Yeah, I didn't have a full-time job there, but I had a bunch of part-time jobs that allowed me to, yeah, be more flexible.
Okay, what about public schools? Did you work long there?
Long.
I mean, like, how long did you work for a public school, and what kind of classes did you teach? What was the age?
Um, like around a year on and off.
Mhm.
Classes of teenagers, and they were up to 40 students in one class. That's something that is super, memorable.
How did you manage to teach them if there are so many people? Like, what was the lesson like? How did you conduct such lessons with so many students?
I think I figured out that the key was to keep them curious, so I would give them a riddle or something that would get them excited to find out the answer. So they would listen to me, or I don't know, so many things that once you enter a class, you kind of you feel the energy, you see the age of your students, and you realize what can they be excited about. So it can be a game like hot potato, or you can ask them some weird questions like this or that questions. Um, yeah, so it has to be very, different, the approach you use with different ages, different classes. But yeah, the main idea is to keep them curious.
Did you use any learning materials like course books? What kind of like resources did you use?
Yeah, every school had a different book that they would give me to use, but they weren't super strict about it. They were, it was the same sort of approach as they had in China. The main goal was to speak a lot and make my students speak a lot too. So yeah, I don't remember the names of the books at this point, but yeah, they provide the materials and everything, but you're also quite free to be creative and come up with your own ideas.
Did you use these official materials by Cambridge, Oxford, or did they have their own published in their country?
Yeah. Official materials. I even have some books here. I don't remember now.
All right, then summarizing your experience working abroad, especially in these interesting countries, what would you recommend for teachers who like are thinking about going to China or Vietnam to teach? What could be the benefits and what could be the challenging things?
So first of all, be ready to take the challenge because it is going to be challenging. It's not going to be super easy, especially if it's your first time traveling to Asian countries. Be brave. and be careful while picking the place you're going to. It's way easier to integrate into society when you're in a bigger city versus a small town. So do that and try to find a job without a middleman, because the cut that they get is huge. Um, yeah, yeah, and be friendly, I think, because even back when I had zero experience, I had just this huge passion and I loved the kids and I knew that I wanted to teach them something. I think it helped a lot, and the parents and the administration of the school, the teachers, they saw it in me and they let me grow within their school.
And looking back at this experience, would you like to change anything? Do you have any regrets?
Yeah, as I said, I think I would go for a bigger city if I could do it again, if I had the energy at this point to do it again, because yeah, it tired me a little.
So now you would not repeat this experience. You would not go to China.
Um, Not now, but not, it's not like I regret it. I would do it if I hadn't done it before. 100%. I think everybody has, like, if you have a chance, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing to do at least once in your life.
Just to go to travel to these countries.
Yeah, travel and gain teaching experience in those countries too, because like I said, it's different. You see different approach. You learn about a bunch of different ideas. You see how those kids they are still, you know, a little different. So you learn from that a lot.
Did you interact with parents while working for kindergartens or for public schools? Did you have any contact with parents? Did you have to report to parents about their students' progress?
Not officially, but yeah, they would ask me if their kids are doing well. We would talk. Like I said, they would invite me to dinners and everything, but I didn't have to give any official reports. No, only to the school, and then the school communicates with the parents.
Did you have a lot of paperwork to fill?
Oh, not really. No, not that much. No, from what I know, in Ukraine, teachers have a lot of paperwork to do, and it's not the same there. See, I think they sort of, you know, worship you there because you're a foreigner coming to their country, teaching their kids. They really, really respect you to the point where as I said, it almost feel like they are worshiping you. So they don't give you that much of a paperwork.
Does it happen in all schools, or is it a general approach that teachers
Yeah,
paperwork?
yeah, I would say it's all schools.
And moving on to what you're doing right now, so could you please share more about your activities now? How do you work right now, and like where do you invest your energy and your knowledge? What do you do these days?
Mhm. So I still teach, but less now because I'm looking for ways to challenge myself and to learn something new, to try myself in a bit, you know, um, different things. Still teaching, but try something new. And I'm working on this community of teachers, which I'm quite proud of right now because I haven't paid any money to advertise it yet, and we're already more than 600 teachers. So that makes me believe that I do share something valuable, probably there. And yeah, I'm trying to come up with more ideas on how I can make make it easier for teachers to teach, to conduct lessons, to make it more fun, more creative, to make it less time consuming. So I share my materials with them as well. And I have this idea that I haven't implemented yet. I want to host speaking clubs for teachers where they can practice their English, because some of them complain that due to, you know, teaching elementary level students, they kind of lose their own English, they lose their skills. So in this kind of events, they would be able to practice their English and talk about teaching matters as well, like trending things in teaching or different approaches, discuss books, discuss materials and stuff. It's just an idea at this point, but yeah. I also run a speaking club for students. We meet every week and discuss different topics. And yeah, that's it. So just teaching one-to-one.
How do you choose the topics for your speaking clubs? Do you have any criteria or do you have any plan? Like, how do you come up with these topics?
Not really. Just try to be. I do it with another teacher, so it's a teamwork. It's not just me alone. We just, try to come up with something unique and thought-provoking, something that would provoke some sort of debate between our students. So we talked about, for example, gender equality, or this week we're talking about red and green flags. So we announced the topic on Monday in the beginning of the week, and then throughout the week we post some useful content related to the topic. We share some idioms, useful vocabulary, grammar points that they might use later on when we meet online to discuss the particular topic.
So is it obligatory to be prepared for your speaking clubs? Can a person just come without reading those materials?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Sure. It's not a must. We just figured it would be useful for them to come a little prepared, to have things to talk about, because sometimes they say, for example, last week we talked about reincarnation, and when preparing for the lesson, I came across this article about how apparently some kids can remember their past lives. I found it fascinating and immediately shared it with the group, and they read it too. And so we discussed it. It was super interesting. Not a must, but they're loving it.
Mhm. Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Seems like a good idea. Yeah. So people who want to develop their speaking skills, they can join. When not teaching, do you have any hobbies or interests that you're passionate about?
Yes, I do. It's traveling, of course, and cooking, exploring different foods in different countries, and cooking myself. I absolutely love it. It inspires me a lot. Walking. Istanbul is a great city for that. Like I love it because every district, every area has its own vibe. So it feels so good to come to a place and just walk around, discover the area. Yeah, I love watching movies, books. Of course, I read a lot of books. That's something that I had since childhood. By the way, I remember how I would buy those secondhand books because it was hard back then to find books in English. I would find them in secondhand stores and read them a lot. I still do that. I read a lot.
What about your plans for the future? Do you plan to grow and develop professionally? And do you have this specific um, actions that you would like to take and to do, maybe some visiting conferences or doing some workshops? And here the question about opportunities for teachers in your place. Are there any organizations which organize events for teachers in your place in Istanbul?
Um, not that I heard of. I'm sure there are some, but probably for Turkish people. I'm sure there is something I can join too. I am in a place where I am still trying to figure out in what direction I want to be moving. I know that teaching is something that I absolutely adore and I want to keep doing it, but I do not have a specific plan as of now on how I want to um, grow in it.
Hmm. Just
Yeah.
enjoying what you are doing right now, developing your community, teachers?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I'm learning a lot from them too. Like they give me feedback and they're like, "Oh, this could be useful. Like, could you share your materials on blah blah blah?" And I try to come up with something creative for that particular topic. Mm. So yeah, just trying to be useful now and see where it takes me.
What kinds
Yeah.
of materials do you share in your teachers community? Are these lesson plans or just articles or some activities? Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so they are all of those, and something that apparently the teachers enjoy are those useful phrases. So at some point, I realized I was quite bored and tired of praising my students using just a few phrases like "good job" and "well done." And I did my research and found more creative, more interesting ways to praise students. And I was like, oh, okay, that could be interesting. I shared it with the teachers, and they loved it. They saved it a lot. So yeah, things like this, or I create my own lesson plans. What I'm working on now is phrasal verbs. I want to make a series of lessons on phrasal verbs. I've already finished two of them. So yeah, they include different sorts of tasks for students to work on their listening, reading skills, speaking skills, etc. Yeah.
Have you ever thought of working for the Turkish audience, Turkish teachers or Turkish teenagers, or just like working for a school there?
I did try once. But back to your question about respecting teachers in different countries, I feel like they do not have a lot of respect for teachers here because of, well, first of all, the pay is extremely low. I feel like it's even humiliating to a point. Um, Back when I tried, I got, I think, $2 for a 1.5 hour class. Yeah, so I just wanted to see what it's like to teach here. So I went once or twice, but I knew that I wouldn't want for it to be my, full-time job.
Yeah, like the payment is really impressive. Like it's
Yeah.
no, but maybe I don't know, maybe the cost of living corresponds to this payment. I don't know. Like this is what you can tell us. But yeah, and it was the payment from the school, like courses or public school. What was that?
Mm, so that was just like a private organization that hosts speaking clubs, but schools pay the same. I know a lot of people who work for schools here, and they always complain about the money that they get because uh, the cost of living here is extremely high, and it's getting higher and higher. And yeah, it's hard to be a teacher in Istanbul. You can find some jobs. For example, I got a job offer which was good in terms of money. It's a kindergarten, but I thought that I was looking for something more challenging to do at this point. This is something I did for many years, so I'm not looking for a job in a kindergarten at this point.
Who is your ideal
But
student?
my ideal student is an inspired student. I think the one who wants to learn, the one who is motivated to learn, and who is curious. I love those students who are like, oh, so this word means that. I would hear it a lot and never know what it means. Now I know it means that. Oh, wow. Or like, they would dig deeper into different constructions or grammar points, and they're like, oh, that's apparently how it works, and they have that so much excitement about it. That's my ideal student, the one who wants to learn.
How would you describe your teaching style right now?
If I had to describe it in one word, it would be flexible because I try to be different with different students, with different people. Say I have a student who lives in the US now, and she has 3 kids. She's really busy. She still finds time to learn English. And of course, with her, I work a little differently than what I would do with a teenager who has more time to study, to learn. And yeah, so I focus on their lifestyle, on their interests, and we discuss it a lot. And according to that, I build my lessons, and I build my entire plan for how I want to work with that particular student.
Okay, just adjusting your teaching to the needs of your student.
Yeah, absolutely. For example, I have one student who is very curious about geography. He wants to know about different countries, and I promised him that this summer is going to be the summer of geography, and every lesson we talk about a different country. We speak English, we learn grammar points, we enrich his vocabulary, of course, but I pick the topics that excite him, and he's loving it. For some people, it's music that excites them. So I create tasks like, for example, I pick a song which is good to learn present perfect, for example, because that's what we want to learn with the student. And I remove words, I leave blank spaces in the lyrics, in the text, and I ask them to fill in the gaps. And then when they do, we listen to the song together and check their answers. And they love this kind of task too. So yeah, it's different for different students.
Mm-hmm. Right, all right. And then finishing our talk, I like to ask some questions about reflections on what you did in the past. If you come back to yourself 10 years ago, which single advice would you give to yourself?
10 years ago, before I started teaching, right?
No, from now, 10 years ago from now.
Right. So I started teaching 8 years ago. That would be before I had started.
All right. Then let's say 5 years ago or 7. So
okay.
when we have already some experience in teaching.
Oh, that's such an interesting question. I never thought about it. Give me a second. I would say don't be afraid of being creative or being judged, and be very careful about the people you surround yourself with. I have met a lot of great people, a lot of mentors whose approach is something that resonates with me, and I learned a lot from them. But yeah, I had to be selective about the people I learned from. So find the people who inspire you, and learn from others, and be creative.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, great advice for
Thank
people
you.
after a teaching career. It might be very valuable to decide to how to move in the future and which jobs, yeah, to choose, like where to work. Thank you so much for sharing your story, and have a nice day.
Thank you. Thank you. You too. Have a lovely day.